All right, good morning, guys. Sorry for the late start here. We can get going. All right. U.S. markets had an incredible session yesterday. Never really tested the downside after such a weak session the day before. It's really surprising. Typically, when we see a big downdraft like that in the market, the next day, very often the market can push back up in the early hours, but at some point in the morning, we usually see a kind of test the downside. Yesterday, that never really happened. We really traded well to the upside. You can see every sector was good. Housing start numbers were decent, but besides that, none of the numbers that have come recently have been great. So, I'm not really sure what the market got its boost from. The economic reports yesterday, the company earnings reports yesterday were, I would say, roughly in line. There were some beats, but there were also some misses. So, not really sure why we saw such a big up day yesterday, but interesting nonetheless. Okay, we also saw Asian stocks that traded better for the most part. I think China was the one exception there. But the IMF raised its growth forecast to Japan, so they gave it a little bit of a boost. We also saw the yen weaken a little bit. And then we saw them cut China's growth forecast from 8.2 to 8%. So I think everyone kind of thought that was probably coming anyway. The corporate action front, we had Yahoo out yesterday after we closed. That was beat nicely on the EPS number, but we missed a little bit on the revenue number. And I think they were worried about some of the mobile ad revenues. And so the stock sold off about 4.5% after hours. Today we've got Abbott Labs, we've got Bank of America, American Express, and we've got eBay. So those are worth keeping an eye on today. American Express and eBay are both happening after hours. Billiton had its quarter three sales and revenue release earlier. Interesting to note the quarter three iron ore output missed by over 2 million metric tons. I think that the fact that Rio beat yesterday and BHP missed today, you may get a little bit of a shift out of BHP. Could affect our market a little bit. Maybe some of the money will start to come back into Anglos a little bit, but Billiton's was down about close to 1%, I think, in Oz. The rest of the market was up quite nicely, so I think it's worth paying attention to today. Also, we had Burberry, which quarter four sales and revenue release is out earlier, and they beat nicely on the Q4 revenue numbers. CFR will show a little bit later in the charts, but it was affected quite negatively yesterday in the early morning session by LVMH. So you'd think that it would catch a little bit of a bump up today on Burberry. I know that Prada was down a little bit overnight, but this Burberry earnings, I think, maybe give it a little bit of a boost today. In terms of market data today, we've got SACPI, we've got UK jobless claims change, unemployment rate. We also have the BOE that's going to release minutes of its last meeting. And we've got mortgage apps out of the States later. Locally here, we've got retail sales, and then we've got the Fed releasing its beige book later tonight in the States. So nothing too hectic today. All right, let's jump into the maps. All right, first thing I wanted to show is Nedbank. Nedbank around, I'll just go back a touch here, kind of toward this period. You can really see from about here onward, 184 was really kind of the line in the sand. We held on resistance here, couldn't break above. Once we broke above, we really broke out to the upside. Came down, you can see we tested it on this wick. We came down a couple weeks ago. Also tested this number quite hard. Couldn't hold below. We've bounced nicely. We got a retest of it day before yesterday and a little bit yesterday. And it managed to close off the level a little bit. I just wanted to bring it to your attention, and the fact that this level here, 188, is also a major level. You can see how many times we couldn't break this support level over and over for about a 3-month period. So I think this is kind of our risk range here in Nedbank. I really think you can have a look at buying it here close to 184 over the next, if we start to test it again. if 188 could be a place to sell, but I think if we break 188, it could be a place to add to NetBank if you like the banking sector here a little bit. All right, let's look at CFR. CFR, we talked about earlier with the Burberry numbers. We've looked at this chart 100 times, but we're making a little bit of a bear flag here in CFR. I wouldn't say it's the most bearish thing ever, but the longer that we don't break out here to the upside, the worse it gets for the share. Obviously, we know 69 is the really critical level, so if we get back below 69 on a closing basis, it'd be quite bad for the stock. I'm not that bearish on it, even though the technicals don't look legendary. But if we break, I think it's got to get above this, and it's got to get above there quite soon. This little pattern here, in order for it to be able to hang on to any sort of bounce here. All right, MTN. We'll look at MTN at 164. We talked about this level several times. Yesterday we had a great rally in MTN at the end of the day. Really came up nicely at the end of the day, tacked on a couple bucks in the last hour, I believe. And you can see 164, which we closed about 50 cents below, has really been the major level as of recently. And I think if we can get back above there on a closing basis, we could see a test on horizontal resistance here at about 170 bucks. It's we're also looking at potentially breaking up from the little downtrend that we've been in. But I think it's also important to note that this chart is looking somewhat head and shouldery in a long-term pattern. But I think that in the near term we may be okay. So if we can get above 164, I think 170 could be in the cards quite soon for MTN. But watch that level on a closing basis today. All right, I'm going to show Clicks. Clicks also looking a little bit head and shoulders in the long term, but yesterday we broke support on Clicks. I know that most people probably aren't trading this actively, but in terms of CFDs, could have a reasonably significantly lower target. Could be as much as 5 Rand lower than this. And we've broke out of what's been a range going back to the beginning of the year. So I think Clicks today could be something to watch. Retailers have really been soft lately. I think with the Rand weakening like this and the gold price having sold off this way and the commodities coming off this way, to me there's no real way that the Rand could strengthen much from here, and a weaker Rand is definitely not good for retailers. All right, next one I'm going to show is Naspers. Naspers, we talked about this the last couple of days. It's hard to see here. I need to change this chart on my 30-day, but you can see, we talked about this yesterday, 170 being the inflection point. We did close above 170 there, so I think we closed at 150.74. I'm not sure why. I don't know. It's hard to see on this chart, but we closed above 170, which is a major inflection point, and it's exactly what we talked about yesterday. I think this thing, breaking out from this sort of range, could easily have a target of $20 to the upside. I think Tencent had some good advertising numbers out overnight and rallied quite hard in Hong Kong. So I think we will see a higher opening there today. But I think this thing is due to test a 600 Rand, at least this 590 level, which is really where we gap down from, and maybe even 600 over the next few sessions. All right, and that's the last one I'm going to show locally. I'll show a couple stocks on the NYSE. First one being PLL, which is really broke down 2 days ago, coming right back up to test resistance at 66 bucks. Might be a great little place to have a nibble here on this bounce and retest of resistance. It's a $3 breakdown, so our target would be at 63, which would be right down here around 63 and PLL. I think we've also broke trendline support here, or we're going back to test trendline support or trendline resistance now, and so I think it's really could be a nice little setup to get short their PLLs. And then the last one I'm going to show is Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson, you can see here, has really had a hell of a run over the past few months. We broke out yesterday above a very clearly established, clear-cut line of what was previous highs, and we'd be really only looking for about about $2 to the upside here, which would put us up around 85 rand or $85. So just keep that one in mind if you guys are punting US equities today. Okay, that's it for today, guys. Thanks a lot.